Okay, I want to share with you guys something from the notes that I added to this morning, just because this is in the test, on the test on Monday. So don't forget, you have a test on Monday. And let me share with you my screen. So one type of proverb that I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about is this better than proverb. And if you notice in Proverbs 17 verse 1, it's a better than proverb. And how do you think you might find a better than proverb? What would be a clue?
The phrase better than.
Yeah, better, right? So if you saw the word better, you would, that would be a major clue that that is a better than proverb. And one of the,
Or rather,
the form of the better than proverb is X over Y because of Z. And then the Z will be either explicitly stated or implied. So it's X over Y. So it's something being preferred over something else. So here's an example here. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. So what is the X and what is the Y in this one, in 16? What is the X and what is the Y? Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. What's
The X would be better than, would be the great treasure.
no, X would be the fear of the Lord.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
okay? Little with the fear of the Lord, right?
Okay.
Yeah, little with the fear of the Lord. So that would be X. X is better than Y. What is Y?
Great treasure,
And
trouble with it.
yeah. So there's a conjoining of those two, a little with the fear of the Lord, and then great treasure without it. And without it, you get trouble with it, right? So in fleshing out the implications of that, you might ask the question, well, why is it better to have a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it? Well, one of the reasons is the trouble, the consequences of not having the fear of the Lord, right? So you could think about the implications that might proceed from the better than. And then if I were to give you 17 here, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it. What would be the X? What would be the Y? And then you tell me the implication.
Dinner of herbs would be the X then.
With love,
Where-
with love.
With
Yeah.
love. Yeah, where love is.
Yeah, so you want
Okay.
to try to get the compound thought there, right? Better dinner with herbs where love is, then what would Y be?
Than a fattened ox
And
and hatred with it.
Yeah, than a fattened ox and hatred with it. So it's taking these ideas together and comparing them, right? And telling you why one is preferred over the other one. So it follows that form, X over Y, X is better than Y. And then the implications would be, because of Z, right? So it could be explicitly stated, it could also be implied. Remember, in terms of logic with the Bible, what the Bible explicitly states is just as true as what it implies. And so it's important, you'll get into that, Lord willing, in your logic classes and critical thinking classes, but that's really important when we start looking at things of an ethical nature. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on the better than Proverbs, but there are a bunch of them in there. If you go into the Proverbs Explorer in your Logos software, you'll see that there's a slew of, and you could just really even do a concordance search of better and just start noting, okay. And one of the reasons why this is so important in terms of reasoning in scripture is that sometimes we get lost in the universal and the absolute. And what I mean by that is that people will ask questions like, well, can I eat dinner with the people who eat the fattened ox who are haters? Can I, right? People ask the question, can I eat that? Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, Jesus ate with sinners. Was it always a sinners only eating herbs? You know, so sometimes we kind of get lost in the can when the better than Proverbs are putting forth a principle of should. So, Michael?
There's something that my father used to say to me all the time. Just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should.
That's right. And that's a good point. Now I want to share with you something here.
I found another one though that doesn't fit the better and than that I think is a better than proverb.
Okay,
It's right below our memory verse on 17.
all right.
Let a man meet a she-bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. It's better to meet a she-bear that's been robbed of her cubs than to meet a fool in his folly.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that you know, I don't go splitting hairs too deeply with the terms of the form of the Proverbs, because I'm not a Hebrew scholar. So are better than Proverbs, are they antithetical or are they synonymous? There would certainly be a contrast there, right? So are better, technically speaking, are better than Proverbs antithetical? Yeah, so you would look at each one to see, well, there could be a similar idea that's being contrasted in the better than, which then would be more like a synonymous. So I don't want you guys to get too buried in the weeds in terms of the typology or the type of the proverb. But I did want to share with you this because I think it's an important point that I want to sit down for just a few moments with you this morning. I came across this yesterday and I was intrigued by the comments. But it was a post on Facebook. Wesley Hazel posted, if you're dating someone who will not go to worship, study the Bible, or pray with you, I encourage you to break up with them. I don't care what they look like, how much money they have, or how cool they might be, etc. You're setting yourself up to fail spiritually. So sometimes people will take a statement like that, and what do? What can you imagine the comments were like? I didn't share with you the comments. What do you think people said?
I'm curious about the comments.
How do you judge somebody like that and you don't give them no chance, no opportunity?
Okay.
Yeah.
Things like that. It'll be derogatory. It probably got some heat. It got some heat.
Oh, I guarantee you that got some heat because that's gonna be, you're gonna hear people judge not that you be not judged. Blah, you know, that's my most frustrating. That's where I have to bite my tongue to maintain my Christianity because I want to go, you don't even understand what that passage means. Don't
Probably have people saying that they could change them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are thousands of women on this planet that have married a man that they thought they could change and found out in a really, really rough way that wasn't going to happen.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, because we're talking about the absolute and getting lost in the absolute, right? And the universal. If I was to ask you a question, could a Christian date a non-Christian? Would it be sinful for a Christian to date a non-Christian?
Now you're into some good ethics here.
I don't think so. I see it as unwise.
Okay, all right, so
that kind of goes with the Proverbs. You know, not all Proverbs are sinful to not follow, but it's not wise.
do you think people in the comments are going to get lost
In the absolute?
in the absolute and in the universal, right? So they're going to say, well, you know, but see, Wes didn't say it was sinful, did he?
No, he didn't say that that's.
And he didn't say if you do, you're sinning.
No.
Did he?
He
Right.
said, I encourage you to break up with them. There's no absolution there.
But I think, and this is my own confession in terms of how I read the Bible. Sometimes I'm looking for the line, right? Where's the line? Right? And And if in a better than proverb, right, we're comparing two different things where in an absolute sense, you might be able to conceive of some exceptions. Right? But that's not how we should read every proverb, right? This isn't a book of absolutes. It's not a book of rules in terms of everything always works out according to the proverb. If you read them that way, you're not giving justice to the text. So what I want to suggest to you is that when people read this, they think of the difference in can and should. Can I date a non-Christian? And, okay, and if I can, then what are the outworkings of that pathway? And Wes is saying, don't do it. Now he's taking a warning down, right? And he's making his claim. And you have to realize when you guys preach, that you won't preach with an endless list of footnotes of exceptionless statements. Right? You're going to preach the text.
Yeah, we have to be spot on.
Right. And stake out your warning. Stake it out with boldness. Don't be afraid to back away from it. Right? Wes did. And I think it's important that sometimes we, have you ever heard the phrase stated that truth dies on the deathbed of 1,000 qualifications?
No, I haven't heard it, but I like this.
Yeah, truth dies on the deathbed of 1,000 qualifications. So what that means is people will go, yeah, except, but well, there's this clause. Well, someone might do it. Or, and here's was another comment. I know faithful people who have married each other and they haven't stayed married, right? So, okay, we can list 1,000 exceptions to the rule, right?
Sure, always.
But don't let that have you back away from the fact that the warning stands, right? And I think Wes could, he didn't list, 25 scriptures underneath that, but you certainly could come up with them.
But I think also we have to, especially with the web, and I'll just say this, we have to be careful of different cultures cross-referencing our understanding of the word of God. Because if you go to the other culture, the Western side of the culture, they believe in prearranged marriages.
Eastern?
Eastern, they believe in prearranged marriages. They don't believe in this dating thing that we believe in, and let's try and test out. They go to the old ways of saying, well, parents set us up. And look and see how that's going.
Right.
And so then, so some people would read that from how they were raised in that way. And then you have to look at the other extreme. Just because you go to worship and just because you study the Bible and just because you pray does not guarantee you're going to be faithful or you'll be committed. You find out there are more people that will use false implications to set up what they want to get what they want. In Florida, this is huge. The teaching of there are so many that taught that you cannot marry outside of the church. And they bound it. And then the man that he's looking for a wife who's a virgin, who's pure in the church, he marries her. And then after 3 years, he gets a divorce from her because he's not happy in his marriage. And he leaves. You run into stuff like that all the time.
Okay.
Let me share with you something here.
All right.
Matthew 22:5. This is an important point that plays out not only in the Old Testament, but in the New. Here Jesus is on the parable of the wedding feast. And he says, verse 2, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent other servants saying, tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they paid no attention and went off. Now, we'll notice this, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized the servants, treated them shamefully and killed them. Now, here's a question. It's wrong for a Christian to own a business?
Nope.
Wrong for a Christian to have a farm?
Nope.
Okay, but here's what happens sometimes is, you know, the Bible will make a statement. And people will, their mind will instantly go to the exception. And sometimes we'll make the mistake of ignoring the weight of what's being said right there in those verses. Now, what's the problem with owning a farm or business? Well, in that context, the problem with owning a farm or business is that you prioritize it and you dismiss the invitation because you're so occupied with the farm or the business. It's not that it's wrong to ever have a farm or business, but if this comes between you and God, you need to sell the farm and the business, right? And people will sometimes, you know, for example, you know, the risk of missing out on the kingdom because of riches. Like as soon as you read those verses, people will say, well, yeah, but Abraham was rich, but Job was rich. Okay, true, right? All right, but why do we instantly go to the exception when a rule's being stated here, right? Here's a general principle that, and so what happens is people want to love God and money instead of realizing that you can't love both, right? Because we live in a world of materialism that people want to say, well, you know, I want to be rich and serve God. And we will note the exception, and people will walk away from that trying to love God and money. And so what I want us to see is that in ethics and in reading scripture, that the principle can stand even if we might find other passages that qualify it. And because sometimes I think we sit out on the exception and dismiss the very principle that's being written in the rule. So I just bring this up, not to spend all day on it, but to share with you.
I admire him for actually posting that.
Yeah, he's taking out his,
He didn't, I don't know if he backed down because I didn't see any of the comments or his answers to the comments, but he didn't back down.
No, he didn't back down. There's a string of comments. I've read a few of them, but sometimes I am better to stay off Facebook.
Real quick, I want to answer something that he said a second ago, because you know me, I'm gonna test you a little bit.
He's gonna make the exception.
I'm not necessarily gonna make the exception, but one of the things that is said there, and we can find how it's applied with doctrinal passages as well. But if they're not willing to it, I understand that does not make them faithful. But if they're not willing to do at least those things, then it's just like when people argue, see, it says he that believes or does not believe is condemned. They use that whole belief thing to not include everything else. But if they're not willing to at least believe, there's no reason to think that you're going to get them to repent and confess and be baptized.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's the same principle there.
But we have passages of scripture, like, you know, when we deal with 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and then 1 Peter chapter 3, that the wife can win by her conversation, her husband that's not of the faith.
Right.
So we have to be careful because we have to put in what the Bible is teaching in different circumstances. And even with Paul reminding us with Timothy that his mother and his grandmother were faithful, but his father was not a Jew. So there were different situations, but you have to be able to explain it. And so it's not a catch-all one-all, it's to get an understanding. And you have people that will come and make statements they try. I've had sisters call me, Brother Taylor, I did it the right way. I went and married someone in the Lord's church. They divorced me. I have a child and I'm trying to be faithful to the Lord.
Right.
And how do you answer those questions when they're trying to be faithful? And that comes into play with all that.
Sure. Let's jump into this Proverbs 17 for the sake of time. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. Okay, so what is X what is why? And what is the implications? Better is,
Try morsel with quiet,
okay, there's X, what's Y?
house full of feasting with strife.
Okay, and why is it better to have a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife? Why is that better?
Peace,
Peace.
Yeah,
peace. You want to be able to eat in peace. You don't want to be eating, you can eat the best meal
yeah,
and still be, agitated. You
Mhm.
don't enjoy it. How can you enjoy it?
right, good answer there.
With your medical background, you know that a strife meal is bad for your, it will mess up your system.
Yeah,
If you eat strife all the time, it's a problem.
yeah, certainly the tension can weigh on you emotionally. Okay, so we've got some parallels here. We won't read them, but there's some other passages that I've got here in the notes that we could look at. 1 Timothy 6 is a good New Testament reference. Godliness with contentment is great gain. So a house full of feasting with strife. So money's not going to be the cure for a life of the I am. And if you choose that, it's better to have less, better to have the smaller house, the old car, the raggedy clothes, and peace and fellowship with God than to have all this feasting with strife. A servant who deals wisely will rule over a son who acts shamefully. Notice that, the servant versus the son, right? Typically, the son would rule over the servant, but not always. And here's a case when where wisdom will prevail, and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers. For the crucibles for silver and the furnaces for gold, and the Lord tests hearts. So what's the crucible?
Would be the desire. Would that be desire?
Well,
Crucible is a test.
yeah, isn't the crucible like something that would hold the?
Yeah, it's like a bowl or a cup that you could put into the fire.
Okay, yeah, so the crucible, so when you think about melting silver, and I'm not a metallurgist or anything, but you would melt metals down. And so there's some proverbs that talk about dross, like dross is that is the material of when you melt down something, it would be kind of what you would draw off is the dross. And then you would have the pure metal that's there. So the Lord tests the hearts. The crucibles for silver and the furnaces for gold, and the Lord tests the heart. So notice the and there. So just like the crucible would be a test for the silver, the furnace for the gold, so also our hearts. An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue. Verse 5, whoever mocks the poor insults his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. Now, I want you to think about this. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but the poor, there is a theory that people sometimes promote called the just world hypothesis, which is the notion that everybody in the world gets what they deserve. And we talked about this earlier, that sometimes the poor are poor not because it's their own fault, right? Here's a child who both of his parents die when he's 5 years old. Maybe the parents didn't have much, right? They're trying to carve out a living. Maybe they're in their 20s. Probably don't have a whole lot of inheritance to leave to a kid in your 20s. And here's this child that's now an orphan and could be poor, right? So out of circumstances and situations that were not his fault, like here's this poor orphan, right? Fatherless, and now he's got to carve out a living somewhere else. So mocking the poor is a reflection on the maker. So just because people don't have much, just because people were poor doesn't mean that they deserve it or that they put themselves in that position. You know, these are complex, multifactorial situations that go into wealth and things of that nature. So it is slanderous to God to make fun of poor people, right? So every person that's begging on the street, could they work? Well,
Yes, I
some
know.
could, some could. Are some refusing to work? Probably. Do I know every ins and outs of their situation? No. Should I be judicious in how I give in terms of panhandling? Yeah. Could you enable a panhandler where he's earning or she's earning $200-300 a day from just standing on a corner somewhere? To where instead of work, they just beg? Sure. So you can think of all of these things and hard times that fall on people and stuff, but it's important that we don't look at the poor and go, well, it's your fault.
Well, it also, environment also dictates circumstance. In our own country, you go to Vegas, and guess what? The panhandlers is a business. They have to file taxes.
Wow.
And people don't realize how much money they make. So the government says, okay,
Mhm.
you're panhandling, and you may make $40,000 a year, panhandling. But you know, you're in Vegas and all the tourists, when they first day there, they're living off of other people's compassion.
That's right. So he who is glad is at calamity will not go unpunished. When the hurricane hits your enemy's house, if you rejoice in that, oh, well, they got what was coming to them. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. So there are consequences that come to people who make immoral choices. But do you rejoice at their downfall, at their hurt, at their pain? We got to be careful that we don't. Now, it's one thing to rejoice at justice. It's another thing to rejoice at, you know, a person's downfall. And so, is it okay? I don't know if you saw the case this week. I think it was in Alabama where the guy was put to death. I think it was in the last week or 2 weeks. Yeah, the gas, the nitrogen. So when we get into ethics, there's a physician-assisted suicide happens in what's called a sarcopod. It's not in the US, but it's overseas. And that's the same principle in that, in the sarcopod. But Lord willing, we'll get to that later. But 6, grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of children is their fathers. So I envision a child there just loving their dad, loving spending time with their dad. The glory of children is their fathers. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool, still less is a false speech to a prince. So this might go along, Michael, with your idea of the rather. And now here's this phrase, still less. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool, still less is false speech to a prince. So I think you could probably flip that around to a better than proverb. Verse 8, a bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers. So the ESV has this word magic stone, and the net translation, though, it's like a charm for the one who offers it. A bribe works like a charm for the one who offers it. And whatever he does, he succeeds. So I think if I understand why they would choose that, a charm over a magic stone, it's because some people would go like, wait, stone, magic stone a good thing or a bad thing? What is it? You know, is the Bible endorsing magic? You know, so people might read that and start asking lots of questions. But when a person gives a bribe, and here's the principle, they're like, wow, you know, this is going to get me exactly where I want. Wherever I turn, I'm going to prosper. They think that way, right? It doesn't mean the thinking's right, but that's how they think. It's like a magic stone. Verse 9, whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. So there comes a time when you realize, I don't have to talk about every problem. I don't have to talk about every sin that's in a person's life. I don't have to give it a lot of mental thought or mental energy. I should spend some time in trying not to expose a matter. So covering an offense, that's part of walking in the light. Jesus is a forgiving God, and we should, in forgiving people and wanting to forgive people, even people that harm us, try to cover their offenses. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. So notice that, the comparison there. 100 blows into a fool, the fool's going to keep being foolish, but a man of understanding, the rebuke, it sinks in. All right, point well taken. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'm going to try to do better. So rebuke is a lost art in some ways. But my father, probably like Michael's father, was not afraid to rebuke me as a son. He didn't mind letting me know I need to do better. And I'm thankful to God for a man like that. 11, an evil man seeks only rebellion, and a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Now, here's this only word, right? Only, right? Now, can we think of an exception? Evil man seeks only rebellion. See, sometimes we can get lost with the exclusivity, right? Can we think of an exception? Well, is there an evil man who's not rebellious? All right, that's not the point of the proverb, right? That's not the point of the proverb, but people go there because they see the exclusivity, right? And my head kind of goes there because I'm always, trying to synthesize and pull stuff together. An evil man seeks only rebellion, and a cruel messenger will be sent against him. All right, verse 12. Let a man meet a she-bear. What's a she-bear?
A sow, a female bear.
A mama bear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Watch out for mama bear. Let a man meet mama bear, robbed of her cubs, rather than a fool in his folly. So that's a quite exquisite picture, isn't it?
That's why that's my favorite so far, because I've been around a she bear that was separated. You get between a mom and her cubs, and it is a very dangerous thing. And he's saying, you're better off. It's worse to meet a fool in his folly.
Yeah. So the difference between wisdom and folly, like that speaks of how extreme it is, right?
Yeah.
And if you go up here to this 100 blows,
Yeah.
right? If you want to know how far is wisdom from foolishness, right? Like these proverbs are painting pictures of these aren't in the same camp. They're not hanging out, right? They're not, going together. All right, 13. If anyone returns evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. So I love this phrase in Romans. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And in my heart, I have to ask myself some questions that sometimes, and I've been challenged. Any of you ever watched The Patriot?
Yeah.
The movie The Patriot?
Yeah,
So think about
Which
this.
one?
That's the Mel Gibson.
It starts go off to war, they got to fight and everything.
Is it the Civil War?
Yep.
Or
No, it's the Revolutionary.
Yeah, American Revolution. Yeah, American Revolution, because they were. But anyway, I love that movie. And when I think about why I love it, it's because the guy who's trying to be humble, the guy who doesn't want to fight, but he's really a warrior, the guy who has the legacy of killing people, and he turns into this brute beast in the creek, and he's like, hatchets are flying and he's taking out the enemy, the British, and like part of me is like, yeah, revenge, like you're getting them, right? And I think about in war, you would be trained, right? I remember I worked with a technician who, her son was in the Marines, and she was talking about going to visit him at one of the Marine bases and how much killing is like paraded all around the Marine, base. And, as a soldier, you're taught that you fight for your brothers, right? But there can be this, almost insatiable desire for vengeance. And if you were a Marine, you would be taught to kill, taught to shoot, taught to mark, like all the things that go along with that. And I'm not saying that it's wrong for a person in government to kill, but what I'm saying is that we need to return evil with good and not evil with evil. And so evil will not depart from his house. We could get into the whole kind of government discussion and justified war, justified police shootings and that kind of thing, but we'll leave that for another time. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. So you think about a leak, or if you've ever driven by on the road and you see those little trickles of water coming through the rocks in Tennessee on the side of a mountain, here is, once it starts, it keeps coming, right? So quit before the quarrel breaks out. So there comes a time when you have to just say, okay, this is causing strife, this is causing rivalry, and I just need to nip this in the bud. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. So notice that justice has been denied. If you justify the wicked, you condemn the righteous. There is an organization called, I think it's called like the Justice Project or anyway, they're a group of lawyers that work, I think, kind of pro bono for individuals who have been wrongfully convicted.
Yeah.
Innocence Project.
Mhm. What I
Yeah.
heard too.
Yeah, so these are individuals who try to help individuals who have been wrongfully accused. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? Now, that's pretty straightforward, right? Why should a fool have money to buy a wisdom when he has no sense? So, just because you paid for an education doesn't mean that you're biblically wise, right? And you could have a PhD or multiple PhDs. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Now, I didn't, this dawned on me in studying. This 17 here could be read, and you just need to be careful that a brother is born. So you could read that and go, yeah, brothers are born for fighting. I have an older brother and we went at it like brothers do. And, but the net brings out this in terms of the Hebrew here. The net brings out that a brother here, it's not a brother to brother conflict, but it's a brother to brother aid. So a brother is born for adversity. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So a brother is going to stick by you. We're going to stand with each other. We're going to fight with each other. We're going to, go at each other. But then when someone turns against the family, people will, so a brother is born for adversity. So note that what the meaning there, according to the Net Bible, and this is the first edition, I think, not the second. It's not referring to sibling rivalry, but for a brother being there in times of calamity. Verse 18, one who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. All right. So here is a time when a person gives money puts up money for things that they shouldn't. And some pledges and some co-signing on loans shouldn't happen. And I think that there might be times when even parents should say, Listen, I am not co-signing your loan. This is your debt. This is your responsibility. I don't think parents are bad for doing that. Okay, 19, whoever loves transgression loves strife. Wow. He who makes his door high seeks destruction. So we have to be careful that sometimes there are people that have melancholy personalities who constantly dwell on the negative. And don't you know, I've been watching the news and, you know, I have a neighbor who moved away. He was a retired physician. And that guy watches Fox News. Like when he would call me on the phone, when I would stop by his house and I was like, oh, I would hear how bad stuff in the world is. And like, I don't watch Fox News much. In fact, it's not on my regular, but man, that guy was just pouring over some Fox News and I'm like, I don't really want to hear about this. I gotta go back home. So I would make my visit short, but there are some people that are just like are brooding over the negativity that's in the world, and some brethren are, you know, they're weaned on the sour pickle, like everything's bad in the world, you know, it's dark and you know, yeah, there's a wide way and a narrow way, but I don't have to live as if the wide way's winning.
Yeah,
I heard a preacher say, and I heard my dad say it one time.
Mhm.
If it's dark out there, there's two things you can do. You can sit around and moan about the darkness, or you can take yourself out there and be a light.
There you go.
That's your two options. Don't
Yeah.
sit around and brood about it.
That's right.
Go be a light.
Go be a light.
There are brothers that in the church that have the same melancholy attitude about the church.
Yeah.
And they'll preach it, preach all the hardness and who's not doing this, that, and then they give the invitation, well, come on, get part of lunch church.
Yeah.
Come on,
You
you lost. Like you just in the church. Why need to join that organization? Why need to be a part of the body of Christ?
Yeah.
And you hear it in their preaching.
Right.
And unfortunately, not fortunately, those that truly would take that rebuke, those preachers, they change. They don't always have to stay that way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we do need to preach the goodness of God and not just the severity, right? We do need to preach the hope, the joy, the light, the love, the peace. Like we do need to preach those things, not to the exclusion of the severity, but you know, there are people that are in small congregations that believe it could never be any other way. Like we're always going to be small. We're, you know, well, like, so, all right. So what are you willing to do differently so that we could be bigger, so that we could reach other, like, what are you willing to take responsibility for? Right? Because I'm not the only Christian serving, right? Like I'm preaching to you, hoping that this message will prick your heart so that you'll knock on someone's door, so that you'll make a visit, so that you'll be an evangelist. Like those are things, and I'm getting off on your
No, you're good.
So what does it mean with the he who makes his door high seeks destruction?
Yeah, so that's a picture that's being painted there of you're drawing attention to yourself as you set up your castle that is impenetrable. Right? He who makes his door high seeks destruction. So you're drawing attention to yourself in that regard. So that, you know, other people will come and target you, so to speak. So, you know, that's how I understand that when I was studying for it. So you have a high door, and I think the net, let's see how the net rendered that. Whoever builds his gate high seeks destruction. Let's see.
Right. And people
So
just
would it?
Gate
Go ahead.
is
I'm sorry.
out, and so make it high is to say lofty things. He brags too much.
Hezekiah did that. He wouldn't show everybody, he showed the king everything he had in his kingdom. That's pride, arrogance.
Okay. All right.
So would it be with this verse? he who loves transgression loves strife. And then he who makes his door high seeks destruction. So it's almost like I'm above the strife, but I love being a part of it, and yet it's going to come for you. Is that kind
Yeah.
of what it's kind of getting at?
Right, it's a complimentary phrase, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you're loving transgression, you're loving strife, you're willing to make your door high, because if you have the door high, then it'll invite more transgression, more strife perhaps. So it's kind of a
Okay.
compound picture there. Okay, a man of crooked heart does not discover good, and one with a dishonest tongue falls into calamity. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. He who sires a fool, so that means he who gives birth to one, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important for parents to spend time in modeling Christianity, teaching Christianity to their kids, spending time in personal one-on-one devotion. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Joyful heart is good medicine. So here's a person who is willing to look at the glass being half full, right? And a person who's willing to hey, you know what? It's a beautiful day outside today. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's a little cool, but Jesus is on the throne. And he's providing blessings for us. He's always faithful, but a crushed spirit drives up the bones. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes people are going to be crushed in life by hardship that falls upon them. You know, a wife who marries her husband, or husband who marries his wife, will at some point, one of them will go before the other usually. And sometimes that spirit is crushed. So we have the opportunity with the gospel to bring good news to them. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the ways of justice. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the ways of justice. So notice the covert ways which things go. The discerning sets his face toward wisdom, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. So notice that the discerning want to know, they want to apply, they want to grow. There's a passionate pursuit of that, but the eye of the fool is set somewhere else. It's going to look all over and around wisdom. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore him. So that goes along with the siring of a fool. To impose a fine on a righteous man is not good, nor to strike the noble for their uprightness. So there's injustice, right? Another proverb about injustice. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. So there's the holding of the tongue. Even who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. I read this in a commentary about Lincoln. It's a quote attributed to Lincoln. It's better to keep your mouth shut and let them think you're a fool, to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
My father used that on me all the time. I'm not kidding you. Gene Stillwell said that to me all the time. Shut up.
We're gonna take a break until 10:15. And
One of the best things I've ever read was something his dad did on their FSOP's topic for that particular time. The book that he gave me was church growth. And his dad did, I guess it was a talk at the lecture, but it was turned into a book, and he said, you can't, until you've grown spiritually in that congregation, you can't grow numerically.
yeah,
It goes
hazardous. All right, chapter 18. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. So I give you some notes on this notion of isolation, because I think about that, and 2 years ago, I was doing some lessons, a series. I did a series of lessons on emotional well-being, and mental health. And this notion of isolation is one to think about, that this isolation, it's not that a person can never be alone. Jesus would go and pray alone. Different personalities will gather their strength sometimes in isolation. For example, people would say, well, I'm an introvert. I don't really buy that whole introvert extrovert dichotomy. But I think there are people that are, I think most people are a blend of both introversion and extroversion. But this whole notion of isolation here is a person who is isolated, and their isolation is one where they're seeking their own self interests. And instead of engaging with people outside their own heads, they just kind of draw in, draw down. They're sometimes unfriendly. They're sometimes cold. They're sometimes, they lack hospitality. They sometimes are just want to do their own thing. And he breaks out against all sound judgment. So you could preach a lesson on the dangers of isolation, and that could be your text. And then you could go to other texts that talk about, yeah, there's a balance to be had, because and people that are very extroverted in their nature, their strength is in being with a bunch of people, talking everything, talking all the time, talking out loud. And the more people, the better. And and it's just differences in terms of where people draw their strength. But this isolation is one of a person who is seeking their own interest and not the interest of God. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Yeah, don't have to say a whole lot to emphasize that, right? When wicked come, first opinions, we'll say in first opinions. And when wickedness comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes disgrace. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. All right, so the deep waters there is a reference to the fact that there's a lot going on in the inside of a person, that as deep waters would be, have a certain amount of risk that would go with deep waters. So the words of a man's mouth, the fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. So the fountain of wisdom continues to bubble, and it should empower our words so that we move beyond the milk into the meat. It's not good to be partial to the wicked or to deprive the righteous of justice. So there is another injustice proverb there. It's not good to be partial to the wicked. A fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating. I used to work with a couple of technicians that were brother and sister, and two of the hardest working people that I've ever worked with as a pharmacist. But there was always drama in their family. And she was married to a guy who had a brain tumor, and but there was always this kind of conflict. If there wasn't like spats between them, the brother and sister, then there were spats with somebody else. And I'm like, man, like, why does there always have to be so much tension and turmoil about things that you should be able to find peace on that? And like, if you limit your relationships with people that are, walking into the fight, but if you join in with them, a fool's lips walks into a fight and his mouth invites a beating. So sometimes people are looking for it. And I remember Mike Elledge said this. Mike Elledge was my roommate when I was at Florida. And Mike and I were talking one time. Of course, he had the past with alcoholism. And he said sometimes people think that individuals create issues so that they can drink. And he said sometimes people, it goes both ways, right? They drink so they have more to, and then this kind of these cycles of drinking and more drinking and things of that. So sometimes people think drinking is the product of the problem, but sometimes people are creating the problem. So a fool walks into the fight. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. So I love the poetry and the pictures that these paint, right? So when you're preaching these, you could preach about gossip. I've got some notes here about gossip, other proverbs about gossip and slandering, and things of that nature. But dress up when you read that, jump over to the Message and let's see how the Message, talks about the whisper here, verse 8. Listening to gossip is like eating cheap candy. Do you really want junk like that in your belly? So I thought, wow, that'll kind of, if you were trying to explain that and put it in plain language, it's the Message, although it's not my primary translation, could have some help there. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. So a slack person is a person who just does the bare minimum, right? I just want to show up. What is the least amount I can do to get paid? All right. So that's just the person who's just trying to get by, just trying to get a paycheck. There are virtues in wanting the company you work for to succeed. Now, there's also another balance where a company could try to squeeze everything, possible amount of work they could out of you. So don't be slack, but be diligent. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. So here is the thing. When we think about the name of the Lord, what does the name of the Lord represent? Being baptized in the name of Jesus, what does that mean? Or the Great Commission, baptized in the name of the Father, the Son.
The authority, sovereignty of the Lord.
Yeah.
The closeness, the power of God.
Now, you could preach this in the sense that just like there's no voice in all the earth like the voice of God that comes through revelation, so is there no name in all the earth like the name of the Lord. You could take Acts chapter 4 and verse 12. No name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved, and that of Jesus Christ. So the name of the Lord is a strong tower. So when we think of the power in a name, is there anything to a name? Well, here's a name above all names, right? So that'll preach. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his imagination. Notice that. You think it will protect you, right? You think money will be your strong city, like a high wall in his imagination. Before destruction, a man's heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. So I had a conversation with a preacher who was highly sought after. And he said that he was invited to speak at this well-known event in the Brotherhood. But he said, the Bible says we're to humble ourselves. And he said, I'm not going. He said, at this event, he's like a rock star. People see him, they pack the room he's in. And he said, the Bible says I need to humble myself. And he resists that so-called Church of Christ rock star notion that people are like, there you go, let me get your number, meeting. And, so could he let all of the notoriety go to his head? He could, right? And be lost. He knows that. So he humbles himself, and I admire him. He's a young man, but that's him.
Yeah. We talk, but that's true. I mean,
humility comes before honor. So if we humble ourselves, right, to the cause, we say, okay, I don't have to be I need to resist notoriety. If notoriety can destroy me, I need to resist, that kind of thing. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. Now, this is important for preachers because sometimes we don't have all the facts. Not just for preachers, right? But sometimes it's like if the preacher begins talking before someone else is finished, like you haven't really listened to them. Like you're talking at them sometimes instead of to them. And a person who hears says, okay, like you just keep asking questions, right? What, explain this a little more. And I can see where that would bother you. And, man, I hate that you're having to face this. And, so try to get all the information you can if you're going to offer a biblical insight on something. It's to his follies and shame. If you're quick to speak, right, and slow to hear, then or if you're know-it-all, right? Some people are know-it-all. They have all the answers, and you're like, I wish you would just stop. A man's spirit will endure sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? Right. So there's that idea of a crushed spirit again. And glad heart makes a cheerful face. And so you could do a sermon on what a crushed spirit is like and how to avoid it, how Jesus will help the crushed spirit. An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Right? So you're acquiring it, you're running after it. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before the great. So one of the things in churches that's important is this notion of hospitality. And my wife can have an impact on evangelism that I can't, in the sense that she's a good cook, she's a gentle soul, and she can gift people with her graciousness in ways. So you invite people over, like why does Warner Robins give out gift packs, right? Is there a cost associated with that? Yes. Why does Warner Robins give out mugs? Is there a cost associated with that? Yes. Why do we give out pens? Why is there this kind of marketing-ish material? Well, part of it is to give exposure to the church, but also to try to let people know that, hey, you visited here. It's an honor to have you in our presence. And it could be the way that we open doors of opportunity. So I heard of one of our elders who took cookies to a lady who's not a member of the church. And that has a way of like softening the spirit, right? You give a gift. So, in sales.
Absolutely.
Right.
It got to the point where we weren't allowed to do it in medical sales. We weren't allowed to do it anymore because it is so effective.
Yeah.
They said it was unleveling the playing field, that the bigger companies had more money to spend on those sort of things. But that's how we used to. If you needed to talk to the doctor and he had a guard dog, and a guard dog is just that head nurse that won't let you get to see him.
Yeah.
You just bring her donuts. It was not rocket science, buddy. You bring in donuts every Tuesday or Thursday, and eventually you're going to see that doctor.
Well, a lot of people say that the hospitality of a congregation really sets on the leadership. If the leadership is not hospitable, then the congregation is not going to be hospitable. And I always make a comment, doesn't matter how good you can preach, it matters, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if the application of what's being preached is not being met at the front doors of the congregation, then you just push people away.
Right.
And so that hospitality, everybody has the opportunity to be a part of that.
Right.
And it just shouldn't be limited. But if the preacher is standoffish, if he's dogmatic, if he's arrogant, congregation kind of takes on that kind of same kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And so it's important.
Yeah, you're right. It should. In fact, One of the qualifications for elders is what?
Hospitable, it must be husband.
They're not hospitality.
You're all good men.
What was it, Hampton said?
Dirty deacons,
Wait a minute, don't forget them all, this, puny preacher,
yeah, puny preacher,
dirty deacons,
dirty deacons.
stinky elders.
Yeah, yeah, but he hooked that thing up, it was nice,
Yeah,
and you can understand it.
and he's preaching plain right there, brother.
Yeah.
That's good.
He said the elders better smell like a sheep.
Yeah. Okay, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. This is important when we get into discussions in science. Science is a provisional knowledge basis that we have understanding somewhat. So you take the case of ulcers. So ulcers, there's a guy who was doing research and trying to write his PhD dissertation on the fact that he thought that it could be possible that ulcers were caused by a bacteria. And he pressed and pressed and pressed on that. And so eventually, there are some ulcers that are caused not just by trauma, not just by NSAIDs, but actually by a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. So you can do a breath test. I think there's a blood test too you can do for that to see if that bacteria is causing ulcers. So we advanced in understanding in terms of knowledge because we went from the unknown to the known. And sometimes it's people who are persistent in asking questions, testing their theories, and seeing if the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. So this will play into preaching because in your works, marriage, divorce, and remarriage, I often won't hear the other side of the story. Unless both attend the worship, you'll hear one side. And so, as a preacher, I can go, okay, hey, I've heard your side. What would your spouse say about this? Right? And so am I going to get a chance to talk to your spouse? Probably not, or your former spouse. So when you just hear one side of the story, it's easy to make a conclusion, right? Because the facts are packaged in such a way as they're delivered to you. So like in law, it's an adversarial system where both the prosecution and the defense have privilege to the information. And there should be some openness to the exchange of facts. And so, Brother Melvin Ote could give you a lot more than I know about how all that works. But if you're only getting one set of facts, you may be getting only one outcome. And so who controls the facts, who packages the facts, who casts the facts in a certain light? Why is there a certain following for CNN versus Fox News? So it's not just information they're giving.
That's how they package it.
It's so I have a news source that I read called 1440. And it's just a brief email that I get every day. And I think the 1440 is based upon the number of minutes in a given day. I think something like that. Anyway, it's just a news source that's free. And it kind of lets me know what's going on in the world. I get ideas for sermons. I get articles where I'm like, oh, I need to use this in an illustration later. So it's just kind of a quick, 5-minute look at the world that keeps me, I don't regularly read, it's not like every morning I turn on a certain news source and I got to take it in. We do subscribe to the New York Times, but I don't read the New York Times every day. But they have some good articles on ethics and stuff and other news things that are worth reading. But okay, enough about me. Let's see here.
That's right.
The law puts an end to quarrels and decides between powerful contenders. A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city. and quarreling is like the bars of a castle. Brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city. Wow. So once you're, why should we work to try not to offend? Now, the gospel's going to offend, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Jesus came not just to be the Prince of Peace, but he came also to bring a sword. He offended those Jews, and he didn't back away from the scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites in Matthew 23. He told it like it was. And it wasn't like, well, he shouldn't have been so offensive. No, he told it like it was. So this idea of don't offend at any cost, like that's a very popular notion in our culture of postmodernism, that, whatever you do, don't offend a person. And, it doesn't matter what the truth is, just don't offend them.
Right.
That's a notion that's popular in postmodernism. From the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. From the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. When I read that one was a little confusing to me. I'm like, well, what does that mean? So the notion there is that as you speak, right, your body would be full, and as your lips would produce, so you would be satisfied. And productive speech is not just satisfying, it meets the basic needs of life. There's a practical return for beneficial words. So there's the note from so as a preacher, we want our words to be gracious. We want them to be seasoned with salt. So we want to be people that build up another person. We want people to seek us out, to encourage them and strengthen them. So the fruit of a man's mouth is his stomach is satisfied. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. So, yeah, that's true, isn't it? There's consequences for what we say, for good and for evil, right? And so we ought not to think, well, it's just words, right? And that's another popular notion in postmodernism, is that words don't have meaning except that the meaning that you give to them. That there aren't, but there is death and life in the power of the tongue. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. So does your wife like it when you call her a thing?
Oh, no.
So the net here has, a good wife has found what goodness is. So in English, our wives don't particularly like being called a thing, but, the thing is, this isn't written in English in 2024, right? This was written in Hebrew, and that connotation, just like when you get over into the New Testament and you read Jesus when he turns water into wine and he calls his mother woman, like if I were to talk to my mother in that way, it could be seen as disrespectful.
Yeah.
But you're trying to bring Greek into English in 2,000 years. So
It actually was a very, very term of respect and complete endearment in the words that were used that we've translated into woman.
Right.
He was speaking to her with the utmost of respect.
It's like when he was on the cross, woman, behold thy son.
Right. Another instance there. Absolutely.
I explained it this way to somebody. I said the Greek uses more words for us to get an understanding, where the Hebrew, and I'm understanding, and I haven't even started the class, but is more concise in their words. They say less words that have a greater meaning to it. So they don't sit there. So when we say hear or hearken, we just say, well, just hear. No, it refers obey and pay attention. But in the New Testament, be doers of the word, not hearers only. You got to go a further explanation because people are trying to justify just those words
Right,
but they have to be in action, so
yeah,
I use that kind of illustration.
good point. So why is it important to marry a Christian? Because what's most important to a Christian is their relationship with the I am, right? What should be, right, most important to a Christian is their relationship with the I am. And if the two of you together, if the single most important thing in your life is the relationship with the I am, then you'll be able to find favor from the Lord together, right? The poor uses entreaties, but the rich answers roughly. So here's what's interesting, right? The rich just say stuff, right? And they don't, but the poor, they plead, they beg, they invite, they don't have the same power that wealth brings. And so the wealthy sometimes are sharp, blunt, and things of that nature. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So having a lot of friends, it could be a bad thing, right? A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there's a friend. So why is it important to have friends with common values, common interests, love for the Lord, love for the I am? I want to keep going here. We might get through into 20 today just because Monday is your test. So let's jump into 19. I'm going to cut off here at 11:40. We'll just work through. If you need to use the restroom, feel free there.
Just go do
Mhm. Better is a poor person who walks in his integrity than one who is crooked in speech and is a fool. Better is a poor. So better not to set our heart on money and things. Better to set it on virtues and integrity. Desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way, right? So these are feet that are quick to run to evil, right? So desire without knowledge is not good. So people can be really passionate, yet if they don't have knowledge with it, that's not good, right? So why is it important to get wisdom? And it's dangerous to have zeal without knowledge, Romans 10:2.
Yeah.
They have a zeal for knowledge, for God, but not according to knowledge. So, desire without knowledge, those two go hand in hand. If desire and knowledge go together, then that's a good thing. When a man's folly brings his way to ruin, his heart rages against the Lord. So there's a raging heart against God. Wealth brings many new friends, but a poor man is deserted by his friend. So there's a difference in the wealthy and the poor, right? Wealthy never short on people they can converse with because people like their money, like to hang out with their money. They get a lot of blessings sometimes from hanging out with their money. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who breathes out lies will not escape. Yeah, there's every word's going to come into judgment, right? Every act's going to come into judgment. Many seek the favor of a generous man, and everyone is a friend to a man who gives gifts, right? So the more a man gives, the more sometimes people want their association. All a poor man's brothers hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? So here's another proverb about the poor. And, it would be good, a rich study just to do a study in Proverbs on poor. And you could just do that by typing in poor here. And you could just, let your mind race over these texts and say, okay, is it good to be poor? If so, when? What advantages do the wealthy have that the poor don't? And you could just take your mind through a critical, and Psalms too, you could look in that, the other verses there as well. But that's how you would do that if you were wanting to do a search on the poor and preach. Let's say you wanted to preach a sermon on the poor. And you could select, read through how many ever Proverbs, read through the other wisdom literature passages, and and see what they have to say. Now I gotta get over to 19 instead of 13. He pursues them with words, but does not have them. Doesn't have the words because he's so poor. How much more do friends go far from me? He pursues them with words, but he does not have them. So is that? Let's see. Let's see what the net does with that third line, 7. One who chases words which are nothing.
You know, an interesting comment at the bottom of mine, it says the meaning of the Hebrew sentence is uncertain.
Yeah, so sometimes the translators are trying to figure out what exactly is this about. Whoever gets sense loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will discover good. There's some two parallel ideas that go together. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who breathes out lies will perish. Okay. Heard something similar to that. It's not fitting for a fool to live in luxury, much less a slave to rule over princes. So there's another proverb about slaves. Slave ruling over princes is something that would typically not be the case. So typically it would not be fitting for a fool to live in luxury, right? You would hope that luxury would follow wisdom. And but it's not automatic, right? Just because you have money doesn't mean that you're wise. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. There it is again, right? We need to let those truths really sink down into our forgiveness, because sometimes we have a really strong notion of justice. But am I looking to pass over your offense to me personally, right? You know, if you're willing to be honest about your offense, you know, God is willing to overlook it. He's willing to overlook my offense, you know, and the extent to which I forgive others is the extent to which God forgives me. So we need to be mindful of those looking over offense aspect. A king's wrath is like the growling of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. What's that a picture of? The growling of a lion versus dew on the grass. What's the envision there?
It seems to be saying that,
If you can hear a lion, you're pretty close to danger and death.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael?
it's something, to me, it's kind of implying the difference between, it's kind of like that parable about you can catch more flies with the tongue than with vinegar.
Right.
It's contrasting wrath and kindness and compassion.
So which would be more notable? So the subject here is the king, right?
His wrath, his anger.
Okay, his wrath versus his what?
Favor.
Versus his favor. Which is gonna be louder?
Well, the wrath's usually.
Yeah, which will be more subtle?
His favor is more subtle.
Yeah.
Because it's like, dude, it fits in the comes.
Yeah.
It's like the rain, former and the latter rain.
Mhm.
You think about Jesus. And throughout the ages, all his kindness will be shown throughout all the ages and Ephesians. Contrast that with the former and the latter rain, the teaching.
Yeah.
We're not fearful of that dude setting on us.
Right.
Where the wrath, we're fearful. We're terrified. We're
Right.
terrified. We tremble. And your senses go away when you tremble. You only think of what's coming. You don't think about
Yeah, this is good, man. You're a preacher for sure. A foolish son is a ruin to his father. So just think if you were going to preach these, you might say, okay, how is a foolish son a ruin to his father? Where is a foolish son a ruin to his father? When is a foolish son? So the how, where, when, what, why questions, But then this one, a wife's quarreling is a continual dripping of rain. Michael, you're laughing. What do you think of this here?
Exactly.
What did he say?
She's always mad about something.
So a quarrelsome spirit,
Yeah,
like a person who just gotta be starting something, right? It's gotta be started, you gotta have, yeah, Michael Jackson.
that's right.
And that's something.
But here's the thing, that's why I'm laughing is you picked her.
Yeah.
And you raised him. You picked her and you raised him.
Yeah,
So I don't know, some of these seem to be telling me maybe you should look a little more inward.
well, and yeah, and look at the attributes of, like, is there constant tension in your relationship prior to, you know, and if you're, even if you're engaged, but you bicker, like, all right, is that gonna go away?
Is that ever gonna go away?
Well, and even in that, I was counseling one of my family members and I said to them, I said, you want this man to respect you for your view of Christianity, but yet you want to impose the standards. You'll yield to him and you're not his wife. I said, but you want him to respect you. And he says he's a Christian. You say you're a Christian. Let's leave that argument alone. What's Christian supposed to do for the will of God?
Yeah,
And you can discern right then. I said, you abstain from having any physical contact with it and then see how long it lasts. And of course, it went away. Because now you're putting it, if you're saying, I care about God and you care about me, you're going to find out quickly if they care for your soul. Do they love your soul because they want you? Why would I want my wife's conscience to be violated? That's one of the simplest ways of disrespect.
right. So here's another one that we'll get to later in the Proverbs, Lord willing. It's better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. And then 25-24, it's better to live in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. So it's not an accident that the Holy Spirit used these for women. It's not that a man can't be quarrelsome, right? But there are women that are nagging, right? That nag. And I used to work with a guy, he worked in the meat market, I worked in the pharmacy. But his wife was a nagger, man. She would like nag that guy, like wear him out. I was like, wow, you're probably working here in your 70s because you don't want to be.
You don't want to retire.
Yeah, like if you go home, like she's gonna whip out, she'll never quit. So anyway, that was just my perception. Maybe she quit nagging at home, I don't know. But yeah, there are naggers and that just, you know, wear a guy out, man. Like that guy, his honey-do list, I mean, it's 3,000 miles long. Okay, sorry. House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. There's a contrast.
Yeah, finally a contrast.
The wife who's dripping like rain, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. So it's important for women to care if they're a quarreler or a nagger, right? It's important for them to care and say, you know what? Like, if nothing my husband does is ever good enough, then I need to check myself. So, but a prudent wife, here's a wise wife who says, you know what? I need to kind of give him a little space. If he leaves his socks on the floor, but he's working 60 hours a week, I can probably deal with that. Verse 15, slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Wow, an idle person will suffer hunger. Whoever keeps the commandment keeps his life. He who despises his ways will die. Idle person will suffer hunger. All right. Keeping the commandment keeps life. So there's the importance of obedience, right? You can't have, that's why these denominations and these community churches, that are just like, hey, just profess Jesus as your savior. Like, well, wait a minute. Like, that wasn't true in the old covenant. It's definitely not true in the new. This idea of faithfulness and perpetual faithfulness leads to life, right? Be faithful unto death, right? So we could quote different passages. He who despises his way will die. All right. Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. So this proverb in the 2024, the correction of a son was physical in Israel. You can't get around it. The rod was physical. It was something used on a child to get their attention and to give you hope, right? Because you get their attention, you get it early, you hold your sons to the line, right? Hold your daughters to the line. That's the job of a father, because eventually they're going to leave your house. And you want there to be hope for them after they leave your house. A man of great wrath will pay the penalty, for if you deliver him, you will only have it to do again. You only have to do it again, right? A man of great wrath will pay the penalty. So if he's a man of great wrath and he continues to be a man of great wrath, then, we talk about Jesus being the ransom for us, right? He pays the ransom. So the ransom has to do, Jesus as a redeemer, has to do with buying back the slave, right? So we are slaves. Romans says, when you sin, you become a slave to both the power and the penalty of sin. The power of sin means it rules over you, Romans 6, and it reigns over you. And the penalty thereof is death. The wages of sin is death. So, but here's a man of wrath who sins, and the notion here is that he doesn't quit his wrath. When you buy him back, right, you pay the penalty, you'll have to pay it again. So the notion there is an important lesson on vice. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. One of the things that I didn't realize when I wasn't a full-time preacher is how much I need to listen. When I go to PTP and I get to hear a lesson, or I'm, catch something on the internet of a preacher here, or I sit even at the feet of like one of our elders when they teach a Bible class, or Michael when he teaches on Wednesday night, like the importance for me to just stop and listen and not, because I'm so used to, I'm kind of being in that preacher mold, right? Teacher mold. But I guess maybe I didn't value the beauty of listening until I didn't get to do it as much. So now I listen in terms of reading, preparing for sermons, listening to the word itself, listening to what I read in preparation, that kind of stuff. But listen to advice that you may gain wisdom in the future. So one of the things that GST gives you is compounded wisdom. Like, you guys are exposed to like 100 years of wisdom.
Probably more than that.
Yeah, like Gary, Eddie, it might be Sam's microphone, I don't know. But like in exposure at a school, Steve, he's been preaching a lot of years. Like, all of these preachers have compound years of, and sometimes it's not just preaching experience, it's life experience where they can bring wisdom to you. Like Neil Pollard, he's preached and done good works at multiple congregations. And now, David Decker, like those guys, I think do your preacher and work classes, don't they?
Yeah,
Like
we
the-
haven't had Neil yet, but
Yeah.
before for that, I've heard him speak.
Mhm.
It's incredible, brother. We didn't. Was it Brother Hampton when he exposed all the commentaries he wrote,
Yeah, I have no idea.
oh my gosh.
He's got a lot of kind written, a lot. Wow.
Yeah, and he exposed us to all, and what I like about it, he linked us back to the older brothers that had writings and different things, and just the free links, and you know, he asked me and Michael to say, well, goodness gracious, I'm not complaining, just so Dave, I know you listen. But there's so much free information on those books, and you know, for us to download that information and build our own, man, it's incredible. I mean,
So he shared with you all his commentaries?
yeah, he gave us some.
Well, shared with us a list of commentaries, and about of the 20 or 30 that he had, or 20 or 30 that he had in the list, 15 of them were probably written by him.
Wow.
So I didn't.
Give us some
I had no
website.
idea.
All us downloaded.
I think you're well short of hundreds of years. I think you know,
Yeah, oh my goodness.
you've been preaching how many?
I don't know. I have to count.
But you don't want to seem old, I understand, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Let's see, full time, I started in 16. So that's what, 7 years? 7, 8, somewhere in there.
Yeah, there's 8 years right there. And you have been preaching the least out of the people that we have teaching us. So imagine 40, 50 years. I'm fortunate. My father's been in the pulpit for, what is he? 80. Started at 30, so 50 years he's been preaching in the pulpit. And then
So I was preaching back in the 90s, some. But
okay, so
what do you count? You know,
I don't know. That counts if you.
That's right, it's like dog
Yeah.
years, it's like dog years, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Plus, your dad, you sit under the feet of your dad and hear that,
Mhm.
remind me if you need to send you that video I have.
Okay. Yeah. A man of great wrath will pay the penalty, for if you deliver him, you only have to do it again. We looked at that. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it's the purpose of the Lord that will stand. So this is kind of interesting. Does that mean that sometimes we plan things that don't, you know, we have many plans, but actually it's the Lord's plans that matter. That's how I take that. That sometimes we have all these great ideas and things we want to get done, and maybe we have our Christianity bucket list, and but the purpose of the Lord will stand. So the many versus the fewer, I suppose, are at play there. The many versus the purposes of the Lord, I would see a distinction there. There's a but there, but it is the purpose of the Lord. Let me see how the net reveals that. There are many plans in a person's mind, but it is the counsel of the Lord that will stand.
Yeah, that's something that I brought up when I was talking about Nehemiah. Nehemiah didn't sit down when he had the decision to make. He didn't sit down and the first thing he did was make a pros and cons list.
Yeah,
He prayed.
right,
Then he made his pros and cons list, but he prayed first.
right.
And I think that's what this passage is telling us.
Mhm.
Seek God's counsel before you start making all these plans.
Right.
Yeah, but also, it also is a focus point for us
Mhm.
as preachers, what we need to focus on.
Right.
We're juggling many different things at one time,
Mhm.
even family, friends, and loved ones, but the priority of the Lord's plans and the will of the Lord must be in our hearts and minds.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah,
powerful.
that's a good one. Okay, what is desired in a man is steadfast love, and a poor man is better than a liar. All right, what is desired in a man is steadfast love, and a poor man is better than a liar. So the better than their notion is what? What's better? What's better? X is better than Y. What's X?
X is a man with steadfast love.
Okay. What is better than a liar?
A man with steadfast love.
A poor man.
A poor man.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah, a poor man is better than a liar, right? So X is better than Y, a poor man is better than a liar. how is a poor man better than a liar? He might have the steadfast love, right?
Right.
He,
So is this like a proverb to women?
um.
Well,
Man,
Yeah.
you want your
There's-
poor man?
Yeah, there's so many women that are, well, he has to have a good job, he has to make good money. What if he's a jerk?
It would be, maybe you could make us a catalog, Proverbs to women, by Michael Stillwell.
Yeah.
We should be talking about Michael Stillwell.
Michael Stillwell. Alright. Okay. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and whoever has it rests satisfied. He will not be visited by harm. So there's the fear of the I am, the fear of the Lord. It leads to life. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish and will not even bring it back to his mouth. That's pretty lazy. Like, won't even lift it. Strike a scoffer and the simple will learn prudence. Reprove a man of understanding and he will gain knowledge. So there is reproof, rebuke. That's a good thing. You know, you could do Proverbs on reprove, rebuke, and exhort. So you could read through the Proverbs with those in mind and preach a sermon that goes along with, and challenge the church, right? To receive rebuke at times, not with, I don't like you or I'm mad at you thing. And in our society, when you disagree with somebody in a postmodern culture, it's a personal affront.
It's hate speech.
Yeah, if someone says you're wrong, they don't like you, right? So, so let's see. 26, he who does violence to his father and chases away his mother is a son who brings shame and reproach. So, yeah, sometimes they're angry children and violent children. Cease to hear instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. So notice the persistence with understanding. A worthless witness mocks at justice, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. So recently I was called, I wasn't picked, but I had jury duty. And for you Warner Robins guys, you've seen the billboards of Dozier. And so Dozier and his son, it was a personal injury case. So I got to be face to face with them in the jury selection thing. So it was a personal injury case, but this, they were interviewing not for witnesses, but for jurists. And it was interesting to note the difference between the two different sides, right? And the questions that they would ask. And they were trying to, any of you ever worked in healthcare? Any of you, like, what do you do? What's your occupation? Have you ever, been the chairman of a jury? So they're interviewing to pick jurists, and then they go back and forth in picking the box. But they didn't want the preacher pharmacist. That's okay, it's okay. But worthless witness mocks at justice. So here's a person that's just, they're gonna make up stuff. Truth doesn't matter that much to them. The details can be fuzzy. They'll make up whatever you want. They're liars. A worthless witness mocks at justice. So they were really trying. Now, here's the thing that I don't know if I'm smart enough to figure it out. Like, I need Melvin's interpretation of my day at my day for jury duty. But a personal injury attorney is an advocate. But when they're questioning for the jury, they want to know who is biased.
Yeah, they don't want your logic. That's right, yeah, they don't want your logic and ethics.
Yeah.
The fact that you said you're a pharmacist and a preacher, oh, you scared the heck out of them.
So it was like, oh, he stinks. But on one hand, they're asking for you to be unbiased, unprejudiced. but yet their duty is as an advocate, right? So the one side is gonna take, and I don't know if insurance companies were paying these attorneys or what, but the two different sides, you notice that they could go, so there are two lawyers, there's three on the Dozier side and then two on the other side. The other two were out of Atlanta. I think Dozier's out of Macon, but anyway, it was interesting because on one side, they're advocates, but yet you're asking for us to be impartial. Right? Can you be impartial? Can you judge the facts based upon their merits? Could you award somebody in excess of $1 million if the case warranted? Like they're wanting to see your answers on these things. If I stood up and go, they look guilty.
You won't have to do jury duty, right? It's the easiest way to get out.
I smell guilty, you know?
Think about the jury for the Trump case for $83 million. How they went and how they selected that jury.
83 million, right? Those were punitive damages too? I don't know.
It's incredible. $83 million for defamation.
That's a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah. So a worthless witness. So the legal things, right? You could read through Proverbs and preach a lesson on justice in the book of Proverbs, right? And you could look at different sides, even if you're not a lawyer, there's some beautiful things about justice in Proverbs. Condemnation is ready for scoffers and the beating for the back of fools. Notice that condemnation is ready for scoffers. So God's going to cut them off, right? Condemnation is coming. So condemnation, when we think of condemnation, we almost instantly think eschatology, end of time. And, but here condemnation is, there's the cutting off that occurs prior to a cutting off. Whenever we talk about death row, we talk about a condemned man or a condemned woman. So there is condemnation that comes before the end of time. There is a cutting off that occurs before the end of time. And we use condemnation a lot of times just in terms of damnation and that kind of thing. Let's jump into 20 in the few minutes we got left, just because you guys are going to preach a sermon next week, next Thursday.
So we're actually going to preach the sermon?
You're going to preach it out loud. I'm going to sit and listen to you.
All right, so this won't be the PowerPoint.
This will have, the PowerPoint will go along with that sermon.
All right, so we need to have the sermon in the PowerPoint.
You'll have an outline. You'll orally deliver it, and you'll have a PowerPoint, and you're gonna give me your outline and your PowerPoint. And I'm gonna grade you orally, right? You gotta turn in the written part. I care about the written part, and I care about the visual with your PowerPoint, but I'm gonna grade you on your oral delivery. And I gave you the criteria in the syllabus. I'm gonna sit with that page in front of me and grade you 1 to 10 on each of those things. Sam, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just making sure because I was going to do it in front of our projector as well, so y'all can see the PowerPoint. But you still want me to send that PowerPoint to you?
Please, yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, your PowerPoint, your outline, and your outline doesn't have to be, write your outline how you write your outlines. Right? So if your outlines are messy and that's what you preach from, don't be like, don't spend so much time. What I'm going to grade you on primarily is your oral delivery. Because when people sit in the audience where you guys preach, they don't see your outline.
Nope.
They will see your PowerPoint if you have one.
Right.
But so I'm going to grade you primarily on your oral delivery, because I want you to give me, and then I'm going to let you give each other feedback on it.
Right, that's next Thursday.
That's next Thursday.
A week from today.
Good.
1 week from today.
So be efficient in studying for your exam. I've given you a bunch of notes here. I'm not sure what page we're on. But for the test, focus on the study guide. That's why I gave you the study guide. You don't have to know everything in the notes, but you gotta know what's on the study guide. If you don't know what's on the study guide,
The reason it's called a study guide.
yeah, And you have to be time efficient, because when you get to the written sections, if you get wordy and it takes you a lot of time to communicate your thoughts, the test could end and you don't get to certain questions. So study the study guide and think about, okay, if he gives me Proverbs 11, what proverb am I going to pull out of that? What application am I going to make? Okay, so this study the study guide, and you'll do good. But don't kill yourself on everything else. And the same thing with the sermon. I'm going to grade you on the oral delivery. I'm not going to grade you on every little grammar thing. Your outline is your outline. But if you get up and you say a bunch of stuff that's squirrely.
And it's not on your outline.
Yeah, I mean, you can go off script, right? If you need to go off script to make your point, but don't go 45 minutes over, right? If the time is this amount and you go short, you're gonna be penalized. If you go long, you're gonna be penalized.
So how long is the sermon? A half hour?
It's in the notes. I forget if I gave you 20 minutes. It's in the syllabus. I forget if it's 20 or 30 minutes.
It's one of those.
Yeah. So.
I had somebody call me the other day. What is it?
Is it, can we do, of course, with the Proverbs itself, do you want us to be able to, or are you looking for this to tie into other verses as far as here's a Proverbs, as far as what this Proverbs is teaching, and now I can go to what Jesus says to kind of show what this proverb is teaching? Is that something we'd be able to do?
Yeah, by all means,
Okay.
definitely use a synthetic approach. I do want you to give an accurate rendering of whatever proverb you use. So you could use a selection of proverbs, but maybe you just pick one and then you take some other passages. So I'll give you some liberty there, Sam, in terms of where else you want to go in the Bible to explain the depth.
Just as long as that proverb is really explained.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do the exegesis on that one proverb. If you just use maybe one verse, make sure you expose and expound and it's clear, and you let me know what kind of proverb it is and stuff like that. But if you want to go to Matthew, you want to go to the law, however you want to do it, I want to give you some latitude. Here's what your outline. So it is going to be 30 minutes. And I'm going to grade you 1 through 10 on each of these things. How did you handle the text? Logic and communication. Were you engaging? Was it organized? Organized is like where I kind of know your flow, right? So today, the purpose of this is this. What do you want me to know? What do you want me to believe? What do you want me to practice, right? So I need to see some organization. Is there a clear introduction? Is there a clear conclusion? Is there a body? The number of points doesn't have to be 3 points. I don't preach 3-point sermons all the time. Sometimes some sermons are more expository, some are more inductive. But is there some organization? Verbalization, is there a lot of ums? Is there a lot of uhs? Appearance, do you look like you're preaching? Or do you look like you just got out of bed? Body poise, are you nervous? Do you start pitting? If you are pitting, I'm going to let you know, not because I'm mad at you, but just better me tell you than
what do you mean by pitting? What do you mean by pitting?
Like when you stand up,
armpits are sweating.
You got like sweat falling off of your armpits, and people are like, "Whoa, antiperspirant, brother."
Heard of it? Yeah.
But if you're a sweater, I don't like, if you're sweating, you gotta use the hanky, I'm all good with that. But if you're pitting, because you don't believe in antiperspirant, I want you to know it. All right, so eye contact, do you make it? Application, is there good practical points? Now that I know this, how do I apply it? Where do I apply it? What do I do with this information? And then time and overall mastery, that's if you go over 30, if you're like 35 minutes versus 25, I'll give you some margin in there. I'm not looking for, you were 29 minutes and 27 seconds. Like, sorry, you get a 50. I'm not that,
I hope not.
critical. I'll give you some margin in there, but if you're 40 minutes or 20, all right, now we got some scores. So that's it. 30 minutes is what we're shooting for. So that's why we got to get through 20, because next week, if you each preach a sermon and we give feedback on each of those, then we're gonna run out of time to cover these texts. Wine is a mocker, strong drink, a brawler. Whoever is led astray by it is not wise. So we need to talk a little bit about alcohol and what the Proverbs say about that. The loving of wine, because people will say, well, don't you know, there's these passages in the Old Testament about, wine being a virtue and, things of that nature, and people will bring that up. Is this a good thing? Verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink abroad. Is the proverb here? Well, yeah, you can drink it in moderation. Could you walk away from that going, yeah, it's fine?
No, you can't walk away from that. You have to deal with that.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that because it defines who you are as a person because of the substance and what it can change you into.
Right. Right. So Proverbs 21:17, whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. So here's the love of wine in 21. Here is the mocking nature of wine in chapter 20. In 23, be not among drunkards, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty. Proverbs 23:30, those who tarry long over wine, those who go to try mixed wine. Who has woe, who has sorrow, who has strife, who has complaining, who has wounds without cause? Do not look at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. It's not for kings, O Lemuel, it's not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. So one thing that you will hear about, I recorded a video recently for World Video Bible School on alcohol use, and the consensus now used to be people would say, well, one glass of wine a night for cardiac health. And some doctors who aren't up on the literature may still tell people that inaccurately. The general consensus in medicine is that it's not good to drink at all. Now, when I was in school, you would hear that one drink, red wine, polyphenols, that kind of thing. When I was in pharmacy school, you would hear that stuff. There was a study done in, I think it was in the 80s among nurses that kind of propagated that notion, but the general consensus now in medicine is not to drink at all. And certainly if you don't drink, not to start. And those benefits are one of the things that has come out in the research is that there can be bias in terms of if I'm looking at abstainers, but I'm not selecting out lifetime abstainers versus I'm a recovered alcoholic. Like if I ask, are you an abstainer, but I don't select out a lifetime abstainer versus maybe you've been clean for the last year, right? The damage of health consequences to your vessels over time with alcohol, what it does to your liver, your vessels and your heart, and you get enlarged heart and stuff with alcoholism. But anyway, if you don't select out for which group among abstainers, then, if you compare drinkers and non-drinkers, like there's subcategories of non-drinkers.
Well, it's funny what you say because in the broad category, those that want to improve it would use those old methods But you know, when you go file for insurance and they do the examination, they ask you more direct questions on your health and the things you to get an accurate gauge of how much your insurance policy can be worth. But in the other side, hey, we want you to drink, we want you to smoke. But you're penalized when you do your life insurance policy because they ask you specific questions prior to them issuing you a policy of $500,000 for you. So we don't look at it that way. We just look at it on the other side.
Right. Yeah, good point. The terror of a king is like the growling of a lion. Whoever provokes him to anger forfeits his life. The terror of a king is like a growling of a lion. So good not to get on the wrong side of a king, unless it's for righteousness' sake, right? It's an honor for man to keep aloof from strife, for every fool will be quarreling. What's it mean to be aloof?
Don't align yourself with it. Keep yourself away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a person who's aloof, they're distant from it. Right here, the net says it's an honor for a person to cease from strife. And then that's the beauty of the net here, cessation, to shun strife. So they give you the Hebrew, the shevet, refrain from strife. So the ESV would say aloof, which in my mind, if someone is aloof, they're kind of distant, absent, kind of that kind of thing. But every fool will be quarreling. Right. So an honorable man isn't always looking for trouble, right? And he's not trying to find it. He's not trying to start something when he shouldn't be. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek harvest. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. Right. So what's the point there? That you got to prepare the fields even when it's not harvest time, right?
Go to the ant.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing in evangelism. Sometimes the seed you plant today won't bear fruit until like 4 years from now.
Right. But you can't do anything about that.
Yeah. But you be faithful today, right? Some people will come back and go, hey, I remember you said this, and you're like, I can't remember what I preached on Sunday.
Yeah, but you know, the congregation doesn't look at it that way. They expect you to plant, water, and get the increase right now because they want fruit. But if we really follow the pattern, then we have to be patient with ourselves, and that helps us to not have self-doubt in what we're preaching and teaching.
Right.
That the word of God will return. It will accomplish what it may.
Yeah. Purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Yeah, I love that. Drawing it out. And that's one of the jobs of us as preachers, right? We get to take lots of information, distill it down, package it in a way, call forth action. You know, a preacher is a herald. I'm preaching on Preaching Sunday, and was preparing for this sermon, and I came across a quote that was talking about Abraham Lincoln didn't want a cut and dry sermon. He wanted a sermon where the preacher was, how to put it, the preacher was avoiding bees or hunting for bees or something like that. And I thought, wow, that's a bee dance would be a good one up there, you know. But the point is, you know, there are preachers that like they're passionate and they let it fly. They let you know they're not you know, weak in the pulpit. They're strong. They stand on the word of God and reveal it in a way that's you can't miss the meaning here. Michael Shepherd, man, you don't walk away and go, huh, I wonder where he stood. Yeah. Oh, I wonder if he would be okay with that. You don't walk away from Michael Shepherd like that. Like that guy he just opened you up and he took his can opener and went inside your head and he went digging a little bit. And yeah, that guy's something else. Okay.
Allow me to tell you the Rico story with that.
Okay. Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find. So this is a lip service that people pay to their love. The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. Yeah, that's a powerful proverb there. Let's see here. Got lots of notes on all for you. A king who sits on the throne of judgment winnows all evil with his eyes. Okay, he winnows. What's that mean? He winnows all evil with his eyes. What's it mean to winnow?
I don't know.
So separates out. Go ahead.
Like
Sam.
a winnowing fork, like,
Yeah.
you know, separating out the wheat from the chaff. So it's going to, the king's going to really look and see.
Mhm.
You think, you know, who's being evil before he makes a judgment on it.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. He had a winnowing fork. Winnows all evil. So he's looking at it. He knows what is evil. He can separate the good from evil. Yeah, that's a good point. He's sitting on the throne of judgment. Who can say, I have made my heart pure, I am clean from my sin? I have made my heart pure, I am clean from sin. Who can say it, right? So the answer is nobody, right? Yeah. So, and then that would kind of go along with this proverb up here. Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? Who is faithful, right? So is there a faithful man? So these are pressing proverbs in terms of wisdom and understanding. Unequal weights and unequal measures are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Even a child makes himself known by his acts, by whether his conduct is pure and upright. So you'll know them by their what?
Works.
Yeah, by their works, by their fruits of our, life, and reveal what's going on in the heart and mind. The hearing ear and seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. All right. He's given us those abilities for a reason. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will have plenty of bread. So it's there's a balance to be had between not sleeping and then sleeping so much. In depression, one of the signs and symptoms of depression is hypersomnia or hyposomnia, either where you sleep too much or sleep too little. So here's a person who can't sleep because they're depressed, and then here's another person who all they want to do is sleep. So there's a balance to be had in getting rest. And I don't think God intends his servants to be burnt out and to never rest and to become workaholics. I don't think that your work and your efforts can become an idol. They'll lead you astray. And even as a preacher, it's important to not let your work become an idol. Bad, says the buyer, but when he goes away, then he boasts. All right.
That one makes no sense to me at all.
Okay. You want me to tell you what it means?
Yes, please.
All right. So you're at the market, right? And you're like, wow, like you want $25 for that? Like, are you serious? Like, that's terrible. Because you want it cheap.
Sure, you're a haggler.
You're talking, I'm not gonna give you 20, I'll give you 5, right? Because you know you'll give him 17, but you're gonna offer him 5. So that to see how low it'll go. So bad, says the buyer. It's the person who's like, look how rotten these vegetables are. And there's like one bad apple, right? Bad, says the buyer. When he goes away, then he.
Now I get it.
I got a deal, brother.
Yeah.
I got a steal on this one.
But here's the thing. You didn't.
Yeah.
I got it for 17. He's laughing, he's thinking, ha, 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 I got a deal, but the vendor's going, I would have taken 12.
Yeah. So I worked in a pharmacy that had a retail component, and I remember them talking about low cost leaders. So like Sam's, if you ever go to Sam's Club, they lose money on the chickens. The chickens are the very back of the store, right? So that you walk by all of this stuff.
That their margins are insane on.
No, the impulse aisle is where the margins is today.
Yeah.
When you go through the impulse aisle,
So they want to get you. Yeah.
That's the golf courses. In Florida, they build golf courses. You have to drive through all the houses to get to the golf course. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
They want you to buy a house.
Yeah. Yeah, so good stuff. Bad, says the buyer. So Mark, if you're gonna do some proverbs on money or business or finance, markets are where buyers and sellers come together and agree on a price. And, I'm a person, I like a bargain, but am I so tight that I can't cut loose with my money, right? So, I have a van right now that's, giving me a fit because I get something fixed on it and then it's like, it's still not, something else is still going on with it, but I'm not a mechanic. But right now I wish I could troubleshoot radiator issues.
here is it.
17.
I'll put it.
Okay. So the mechanic put on some pressure tester, but he couldn't find the leak. But every time I drive it, you can smell it, the antifreeze. Okay, enough of my vehicle. There's a golden abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. There's golden abundance of costly stones, but lips of knowledge are precious. So there's a contrast between the material and the words. Take a man's garment when he puts up security for a stranger, and hold it in pledge when he puts up security for foreigners. So there again is that notion of security of for people that we really don't know. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth will be full of gravel. That's quite an interesting picture there. You deceived and you're like, oh, wasn't this good? But then you realize, I've sinned in doing so. Plans are established by counsel, by wise guidance, wage war. So, you think of, I remember watching some stuff on, I think it was Desert Storm 1. And when the aerial attacks on that, not being a military person, were pretty ingenious how they would send in like drones to get the anti-aircraft missiles to fire off. And then like the B-2s, I think, were coming around and taking out, just the knowledge behind the strategy in war sometimes is pretty fascinating on how they get the enemy to reveal their stuff and then go in and destroy it. Let's see. All right, it's 11:39. I'm gonna quit here for today. Let's have a quick prayer, and then if you guys have more you want to talk about, we will. Lord, we are so grateful for this day. We're thankful for this class. We're thankful for the time that we've had together. Pray that you'll be with each of the students that are going to take this test on Monday. Pray that they'll study hard and well, and that they may do well. Pray for them as they prepare for their sermons. Pray that they might do well as well. Pray, Father, that you will be with the sick, especially those of the household of faith. We're mindful of our sister Sherry Lazaro and her relative. That pray that you'll be with them in their hour of need. We know there are others, Lord, that are sick and in need of our prayers. We pray, Father, that you'll bless us and dismiss us into your care. In Christ we pray.
Amen.